Stephen Paul Jobs. He was born on the 24th of February 1955 in California by two university students. Being such a young parent, they did not want to overload themselves with more than they could bear, and the mom decided to give the young boy in adoption. But the adoption did not occur without some requirement from the mother, who, despite unable to care of his son but still wanted him to become someone one day, was really rigorous with who would adopt her son. The requirements were the following. The adoptive parent had to be well educated and wealthy enough to be able to pay for the education of the young Steve. Abdul Fattah al-Jandali, the biological father of Steve, was an Arab Muslim born and raised in Syria. He studied at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon. He then pursued a PhD at the University of Wisconsin, where he and Joanne Carroll, the biological mother of Steve, met. She was of a Catholic faith. Abdul Fattah and Joanne were the same age. Moreover, he was teaching assistant for a course that Joanne was undertaking. Being from two different faiths did not help with their relationship, as their parents were not tolerable or approved of the relationship. This fact did not stop the couple, and in 1954, when Joanne and Abdul Fattah spent the summer with Abdul Fattah's family in Syria, she became pregnant with Steve. Paul Jobs, the adoptive father of Steve, was a Coast Guard mechanic, and after he left the Coast Guard, he married Clara Hagopian, the adoptive mother of Steve. Their effort to start a family of their own was short-lived due to the complication of pregnancy that left Clara unable to have kids of her own. The couple then was left with the option of adoption. Due to the requirement that Steve's biological mother, Joanne, put in place, she was not admissible of Paul and Clara Jobs adopting Steve, as neither of them had a college education. After taking the matter to court in an attempt to have Steve adopted by a different family, she later accepted Paul and Clara to adopt the young Steve after they pledged to pay for Steve's college education. Few years after his adoption in 1959, the family moved to the Mountain View in California. As a child, the young Steve admired his father's craftsmanship, and by the age of 10, Steve was very immersed with electronics available at the time and befriended many engineers in the neighborhood. Steve was a brilliant yet troublesome child in school, and by troublesome, I mean he was a child that really did not like to abide by the traditional school rules. He is quoted for saying, "I was kind of bored for the first few years, so I occupied myself by getting into trouble." Being a brilliant student in school, Steve did get bored quite often, and he will try to overcome the boredom by playing pranks. In one instance, he and his friend managed to convince some of their schoolmates to tell them the combination number for their bike locks. Then they went outside and switched all the locks, and none of the kids could get their bikes. It took them until late that night to sort the situation out. Pranks of this sort got him suspended few times in school. His father, Paul, who was abused as a child, never punished the young Steve for his behaviors. Instead, he criticized the school for making him memorize stupid stuff rather than challenging him or stimulating him. Steve would later credit his fourth-grade teacher Imogen Hill with turning him around, kindled a passion in him for learning things. Moreover, due to him being intellectually special, the school made the remarkable proposal when he was in the fourth grade that he skip 2 grades, go straight to grade 7, as the school figured that would be the easiest way to keep him challenged and stimulated. Steve's parents, however, decided that it would be more sensible to have him skip only 1 grade. In 6th grade, Steve became a socially awkward loner as he was often bullied. Even though they were not fervent about their faith, Job's parents wanted him to have a religious upbringing, so they took him to the Lutheran church most Sundays. That came to an end when he was 13. In July 1968, Life magazine published a shocking cover showing a pair of starving children in Biafra. Jobs took it to Sunday school and confronted the church pastor. The confrontation with the pastor did not convince him, and he never went back to church. At the age of 19, Steve Jobs and his friend Daniel Otke traveled to India to visit Neem Karoli Baba in search of spiritual enlightenment. However, by the time they got to their destination, the guru had passed away months prior. Despite this fact, the pair still ended up spending months in India exploring their spirituality. 7 months later, Jobs returned to the US and started to practice the Zen Buddhism. In 1968, Steve Jobs was introduced to Steve Wozniak, who was 5 years older than him. They both found it fairly easily as they were both interested in electronics. Unlike Jobs, Wozniak was an engineer and far more knowledgeable about electronics and often would work on his own side projects. One such project was the Blue Box, which was a low-cost digital device that generated different tones and could be used to manipulate the telephone network, allowing free long-distance calls. As a natural salesman, Jobs came up with the idea that the Blue Box could be more than just used for pranks. They could build it and sell them. The part to build a Blue Box cost $40, and Jobs decided they should sell it for $150. The fun and profit came to an end when they were robbed at gunpoint by a gang to which they were trying to sell a Blue Box to. However, the partnership paved the way for what would be the adventure together. Jobs is quoted for saying, "If it hadn't been for the Blue Box, there wouldn't have been an Apple." After he dropped out of Reed College, Jobs returned to his parents' home in Los Altos in 1974 and began looking for a job. Not long after that, he was hired as a technician by Atari Inc., which was an American game developer and home computer company. In 1975, Jobs and Wozniak, also known as the Two Steves, started attending meetings of the Homebrew Computer Club, which was an early computer hobbyist group in California. The club played an influential role in the development of the microcomputer revolution. As a self-educated electronics engineer, Wozniak self-taught himself and designed computers on paper. When the 6800 microcomputer CPU came out, Wozniak's paper computer only needed some minor changes to run on the new chips. And when he showed it to Jobs, Jobs was immediately interested in its commercial potential. The paper computer would later become the Apple I. Jobs eventually convinced Wozniak to go into business together and start a company. On April 1st, 1976, Apple Computer Company was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. As a side note, Ronald Wayne was given a 10% in the company. He sold his 10% of the company for about $2,300, but that's a video for another time. So do subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified when his incredible story comes out. Going back to the Apple Computer Company, now known as Apple Inc. Soon after the company was formed, the two Steves demonstrated the finished version of the Apple I at the Homebrew Computer Club. One of the attendees was Paul Terrell, a computer store owner. He was so impressed by the demonstration that he became a customer for the Apple I. With the success of the Apple I, Apple II and Apple III followed. Almost 5 years after it was founded, on December 12, 1980, Apple went public. The IPO was such a success that about 300 millionaires were created on that first day of the IPO.
When the stock market closed that day, the company was worth $1.7 billion.
When Apple went public, it was the largest new stock offering, initial public offering in 15 years. And to have this kind of visible success in 1980 at a time when America was suffering economically was really quite a sensation.
Apple went on to release the Apple Lisa, the Macintosh, and the famous 1984 commercial. In the turn of events, the power struggle within the company will lead to Jobs resigning from Apple in September of 1985. This turn of events led to Jobs founding Next Inc., a software company, and acquiring Pixar, an animation studio. Both companies were later sold to Apple in 1996 and to Disney in 2006, respectively. Apple Inc. seems to be doing well after the departure of Jobs. However, as life will have it, the company started to struggle in the middle of the 90s. This fact led to Apple to acquire Next, which offered Jobs re-entry into the company he had found. Jobs returned to Apple officially in January of 1997. The management side of Apple was struggling, and this paved way for Steve Jobs to slowly but surely make his way to the top and would eventually become CEO. Steve Jobs restored Apple, and under his leadership, products such as the iMac, the iPod, the iPad, and the iPhone all came to exist. He served as CEO from January 2000 to August 2011. On the 24th of August 2011, Steve Jobs resigned his position as CEO of Apple due to his long battle with pancreatic cancer, which took his life on October 5, 2011 at the age of 56. It has been 10 years since Steve Jobs passed away, and as I'm typing on a Mac with an iPhone next to me and having owned an iPad, it just makes me think about the brilliance of mankind. how two people from a humble background in California, one a natural engineer and the other a visionary, have started a company from their garage to what Apple Inc. is today. As at the time of writing, Apple's market cap is over $2.4 trillion US. This shows that people who think different are the ones pushing humanity forward. I would like to leave you with Apple's 1997 Think Different campaign that was launched soon after Steve Jobs returned to the company he founded. Here is to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see them as geniuses. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Stay curious.